father was named Jesse O. Davis, and he was born on October 5th, 1893, out from Pollock. They lived on a little 80-acre farm out from Pollock, Louisiana. My mother was born in Alla, that's LaSalle Parish, on June 10th, 1893. I was born on March 27th, 1918, on a little community called Latanya, owned by Latanya in Rapides Parish, which was about 5 miles from LeCount, Louisiana. My father and mother were school teachers. There was a little two-room school at Latanya, and they both were teaching, and I was born at that place. I had two sisters, no brothers. One sister, the older sister, was Marjorie. She was born in 1919. I had a sister named Litha. She was born in 1921, and she finished along with Marjorie at Louisiana Normal College. Now they call it Northwestern University in Natchitoches. I had finished high school at age 14. They were sort of reluctant to. I wanted to go, and they suggested that, or thought about going to LSU, but then they thought that I was a little young for LSU, so they sent me to Louisiana College.
In Pineville?
Louisiana College was a private Baptist school.
Right, in Pineville or Alexandria?
In Pineville.
Right.
In Pineville. And I went there one year, and then they decided I was old enough to go to Northwest Normal. And I went there to Normal for 1 year. I enjoyed Normal, but my father had finished Northwestern in 1930. He'd gotten his degree, a BA degree, but from summer school work. And he went to Baton Rouge to work on his master's degree in the summer of '34. And he asked me if I wanted to go with him. So he and I went down to Baton Rouge. And I entered LSU in the summer.
You entered LSU as a junior?
No, I entered LSU as a junior. That's correct. I did not take military at LSU because I was what they call a transfer student. I went in the graduate school in history
at LSU.
At LSU, and got my master's degree in history and government, and so I entered law school in the fall of 1937. Of course, that was a intramural. We had Dean Flory. He was a long-term member of the faculty. The dean the year before had been released from duty. It was not forgotten what his name was, but Mr. Flory, Ira Flory, was an acting dean. The next year, Dean Hebert, Paul Hebert, came in from, I believe he'd been in at Loyola in New Orleans as dean or on the faculty there. But he came, my second year, and he was an excellent man. I took negotiable instruments under him, as I recall. Really, I thought the best teachers I recall was J. Denson Smith. He was an excellent teacher. He knew what he was doing, and he had a way of asking questions that we were not prepared for. He could understand whether we'd studied for the day's lesson. Well, I knew I had to go into service. I had a fairly low draft number. I knew that my time was coming, and that I get a letter giving me a commission, and ordered me to Pearl Harbor. I received my orders to go on August 23rd of 41, and I arrived at Pearl on September 7th, 1941. I was awakened at the hotel. The hotel was on the edge of the side next to Pearl Harbor. It was 3 or 4 miles. They awakened by people hollering and carrying on, and I stepped out in the hallway and asked what was going on, and they told me that Pearl Harbor was under attack. Well, I threw on my clothes, and I didn't have any automobile. I didn't know what was going on. Didn't have a phone in my room. But I went out on the street, and a cab came along, and I caught this cab. He took me to Pearl, and dropped me off at the gate, Pearl Harbor gate, where they had the open bed trucks to take people into their place of duty. Now, when I got there, the Japs had come over in 2 waves. They say the first wave was about 175 planes, and they were hitting at Pearl Harbor. They were hitting Hickam Field, next door to Pearl Harbor, and they were hitting the Wheeler Air Base. And the first wave was over. The second wave of the same number of planes came in about an hour after the first wave. Well, when I got there, the second wave was bombing. They were not bombing at Pearl on the shore installations. They didn't hit the administration building. Didn't hit the oil tanks. They were hitting the ships fundamentally in the harbor. Dropped me off there at Dry Dock Number 1.
Was that near your office building?
It was about a quarter of a mile.
From where you worked?
From the building. So I hightailed it back from where I was dropped off to the building.
What did you
they were not bombing that. They were bombing. You could see where they were bombing, but they were not trying to hit the building. It was a completely lost situation. I remember that afternoon, some of us went over to the hospital, and there Pearl Harbor had a big hospital, naval hospital, and that was a focal point where they were bringing in the wounded, and the dead, and what have you. And of course, they quickly filled up, and they had this little boulevard that ran up to the hospital, and they had placed the dead 2 or 3 rows together on down. And the dead that they couldn't do anything with, they couldn't help, and they didn't have room in the hospital for them. And then after the war came to Shreveport, and Harvey Broad's a local lawyer, and I practiced together for about a year. I would say at that particular time the premier firms in Shreveport were the Wilkinson firm, the Blanchard, Goldstein, Walker, and O'Quinn firm, and the Cook, Clark, and Egan firm. Well, we had Judge Robert the district court, Judge Robert O'Neill. We had
Galloway.
Judge Mills, Judge E.P. Mills.
Galloway.
That was Galloway. I believe they called him Jug
Hunter.
Galloway.
Chuck Galloway, yeah.
And they had John Pleasant had been judge, but he was a judge during the war. He took a leave of absence and went to war himself. But we still had another judge here. I don't recall.
Turner. Pops Turner. Turner.
No, Judge Turner. Judge Turner was elected after the war. He and Willie Woods ran for what had been John Pleasant's position, and Willie Woods beat Pops Turner, and then the next vacancy came up. Henry Turner ran for judge and was elected. So we had the juvenile judge, only one juvenile judge at that time, and that was Judge Barnett. And we had one city judge at that time, Judge Ruvian Hendricks. Those very small in number in comparison to the number of judges that we have at this time. I had made friends with Charles Phillips, who was a reporter for the Shreveport Journal, and he had covered the legislature, had been covering the legislature. Well, the last day of qualifying in 1956, Charlie Phillips called me, and he said, I want you to run for the Senate. And just before 5, I went and qualified for to run for the Senate. So we had a campaign that I guess fundamentally it was on the basis of the fact that Charles Tuke had voted against right to work. And I ran on the basis of voting to retain it. And so in the final analysis, I carried the DeSoto Parish by about 2,000 votes. In Los Cato Parish by about 1,000 votes. But I had 1,000 votes to spare and was elected, and that was in '56. And I served.
Who was the governor then?
That was Earl Long. Earl Long was governor. Earl was governor my first term that I was in the Senate, and I've just mentioned my first venture with Earl. I did vote for the Constitutional Convention that he supported. Governor Davis, Jimmy Davis, followed him. Jimmy was governor when segregation fight, or integration fight for schools was in. He inherited that particular time of our life. Everybody, well, I say everybody, most of the members of the legislature were for segregation. And we were called in the special session to pass acts which we had hoped would solve the problem. We'd pass them in special session about as fast as the federal judge, forgotten his name, in New Orleans would declare.
Skelly Wright.
Yeah, Skelly would declare him unconstitutional, in my opinion. John McKittrick was by far the best governor that we've had in my time, at least while I was there. He came at a time, I think he was sort of healing the old problem of long versus anti-long. You know, that was the going for a long time. You're long or you're anti-long. He instrumental in bringing a lot of new industry in, particularly over in South Louisiana. But a lot of it came because of natural gas. But he was I believe was an honest man. Edwin Edwards was very popular at that time. He the gas and oil money, royalty money to the state was coming in. We had flush money. He could pass it around well. He had a very gift of gab, as I would call it. But I never did think he was honest. Never did think he was honest. It's turned out that he was not honest. He served a term in the legislature, a term in the federal jail. But I didn't jump him much, but he was well liked at that particular time. I've practiced law from 1940 to 2011, and I feel honored to have been in the office and conducted what I think was in an honorable fashion. And thank you very much for